Hello, my name is Julie. I am the teen librarian at the Central Branch Library. These are the supplies you should have. You should have a piece of green felt for Yoda, a brown piece of felt for the Cloak, a smaller piece of light felt. This is for the ears. You'll have a needle. It'll be packaged up nice so you don't poke yourself with it. A piece of ribbon to attach the keychain, of course the keychain, and your thread should be wrapped around a little card like this, and your pattern, and last but not least, you'll have two little pieces of black felt that we pre-cut for you for the eyes because they were a bit difficult to cut, so don't lose those. What you'll need to provide is a pair of scissors, and you'll need a pencil and a ballpoint pen to trace your pattern. All right, so the first thing you're going to do is cut out the pattern of Yoda for the body pattern and the ear pattern. So grab your scissors. We got Baby Yoda and the little ear pattern right there. Okay, so this is where you grab the ballpoint pen. And I would start with Baby Yoda because he's probably the easiest. You can set aside the little ear pattern. So you put Baby Yoda on your felt like that. And I've cut two just so you could visualize. This is how they fit on that little piece of felt. Use your ballpoint pen, trace it, and then cut them out. And then you have two Baby Yodas. And as you can see, I have the edges where I drew him with that when I traced the paper. So I'm going to put him aside. And now you're going to grab your little bitty piece of brown felt and your little bitty ear pattern. So you're going to put that like that, and then you can flip it over and do the opposite right there. It should fit. Trace it with your ballpoint pen and cut them out. And there you have your little ear patterns and your little Baby Yodas. So to get started, you're going to, number one, we're going to sew the Baby Yodas so that they have that trace mark on the edge. You want to put that in so you don't see it and it'll be covered up. So do that and then grab one, set the other aside. And so this is a good side, this is the side you want facing out. And the ear pattern, same thing, which is why I told you to flip them when you trace them so they kind of even up. So you're going to place those on your little Baby Yoda right here. You're going to grab your eye patterns. So we're going to sew the ears first. So you're going to take this piece of thread, the brown, off of your card. So these threads, they kind of come apart like that. Go ahead and you're going to separate 3 of those inner strands from the other. All right. So if you want, you can take one of them and wrap it around the card or just set it aside so you don't get it tangled and everything. This is also the thread, so you're going to need a little bit of thread to tack down the cloak, and if you have a little bit of extra this when you're done, hold on to that. You can use that, or you can use the black or even the green because we're going to hide that little stitch for the cloak. Okay, so once you have 3 pieces of thread, you're going to want to thread your needle. Once you have it thread, if you want to make a knot, I'm going to wrap it around my finger and then don't poke yourself, but stick the needle through. Try to make it close to the end, but not right up on the end. So all right, once you got a knot, there you go. Leave that little piece right there. If you want to sew a little less, you can pull this down, but make sure you're only sewing and what's going into your material and staying there is this piece of one layer of the thread. All right. So since we're starting with the ear pieces first, I'm going to set the eye pieces aside. You can set one aside and just start sewing this one. And so we're going to start from the back to hide our knot. You don't want to go right up on that edge because it won't have anything to grab the edge of that brown. You want to go in a little bit. And it's just a straight up stitch. Go up and down. If you can, try to keep your stitches about the same space apart. Okay, so once you get that last stitch, you're going to end going down from the front to the back. You're going to flip it over, and that same way you did the knot may be helpful again too. So you're going to so your back side should look similar to this. Don't worry if you have a longer piece of thread, we can trim that up later. So you're going to flip that around and then run your needle underneath like you're tying a knot, tying your shoes. And again, you want it kind of close. So I'm going to put my needle in there to kind of pull that knot closer. And we're going to grab our scissors. And you can trim it pretty close, but you can leave a little tail. It's fine. It's going to be all tucked in. So for your second ear, so you got that one nice and sewed on, you're going to do the same thing. But here you go. This is where you want to kind of eyeball it. See they're about the right space from the top to the bottom. And it's pretty forgiving. All right, so once you have your two ears sewn on, you can get your two eyes sewn on. And so I would definitely put them on there and figure out roughly how you want them centered, and then grab your black thread. And just like the ears, you're gonna sew one at a time. And again, with the black thread, you're gonna take 3 of the little inner strands and separate it from the other 3. And with the black thread, it should be easy to do because you don't have a very long piece. Just go slow if you gotta put it down. All right, so once you have that first eye sewn on, go ahead and arrange your second eye before you start sewing, and then stitch that one down the same way as you did the eyes and the ears. All right, so once you have your eyes and your ears sewn on, and you grab your other pattern, and remember the trace marks want to go in, so you want to put the trace marks so they touch each other, and you line them up like that, and we're going to sew it together. Okay, so take your green thread. We have a very, very long piece of green thread. We still want to separate it out to 3 strands and 3 strands. However, it's such a long piece that if you used it at the length that it is, it would get tangled. So first, before you even separate out the strands, cut it in half. Just fold it in half and then snip the end right here. And you can put that full green piece aside. So you grab your other half and go ahead, separate those strands out. So before we start sewing our little green Yodas together, we want to put the keychain in and the ribbon. So take your bit of ribbon, and if you want, you can actually put the keychain on it. And you're going to tie it together, just in a knot. It doesn't have to really look all that pretty. Just however you can tie it together. You want kind of a little flat piece right here so your key ring can freely move about it. Once you have that, you can just tighten up that knot. So that is going to go in here. And if this is too long, you can trim it, but I think it's probably about the right size. And in the next step, I'll show you your 2 options for sewing your little Baby Yoda together. So once you have your key ring on your ribbon and tuck that inside, you can start your stitching. This will fall out. I'm going to place it to the side for the moment, but when you get to this piece right here at the top, you're going to want to put it back in. So for this, it's a little different in that you want to hide your stitches, or rather your knots. I'm going to start from down here. And I'm going to lift up from one to the other and sew from the inside to the outside for this first stitch. So there's 2 ways you can do this. You can go like that. I got it going through the back, and you can come up to the front and stitch down like this and just go all the way around. Or, and I gave you a link to a really good explanation of the blanket stitch, which starts the same way. And when you pull it almost all the way through, you're going to run your needle back through that stitch. And then I'm putting the needle through. that loop made. And it makes that little piece right there. So if you want to do the blanket stitch, you can do that, or you can just go front to back. I'll stop you before you get all the way around. Okay, so when you reach the top here, this is where you want to make sure that you have your key ring tucked in. That's probably good. So if you were doing the blanket stitch, you can kind of ignore that for a moment. You got to hold it in place so it stays. There we go. That's a nice good tab on it. And this first stitch isn't even going to be through the ribbon. So you're just going to kind of go up and down, and you want to make sure you're making it through the ribbon pretty good here. All right, and once you get those stitches in, tack that down pretty good. If you're doing the blanket stitch, you can go back to doing the blanket stitch. And so I'm going to stop when I get probably about here, right there. So we have a little hole, and I'll show you how to fill it with the stuffing. So just make sure you're tucking in all of your little stray threads from the ears and the eyes as you go so they're not sticking out. So once you have gotten to about here where you still have a little hole, try to watch and mind your needle so you don't have to thread it again. But you're going to take your filling and you're going to start to stuff it in. And this is where your handy dandy pencil comes in handy. I would first start with your eraser. So the thing is, you have to get it into the head and into the ears. The very little tips of the ears aren't going to get any, and that's what kind of makes them curl, but that's okay. So once you get it in there, you want to move it around and stuff it. We're going to go in this ear first. And just stuff it in there. Other ear here. All right, we're going to stuff his leg in 1 second. We're going to do a few more stitches. Into the leg a little bit. So the reason I say use a pencil is because I don't want ink getting on the outside. But that should be enough stuffing, and you can finish up sewing here. You're gonna hold it together pretty good. So I got that knot. I'm going to use the needle to poke it in. All right, so once you have your little Baby Yoda, you're going to grab his little cloak. So basically, you're going to take it lengthwise and fold it over like this. You're going to put him inside, and you're going to wrap it around. It should be enough. In fact, it might even be a little too long. It's a little too long lengthwise, so I'm going to trim it, but I kind of like that. And I'm going to trim a little here too. So I want it so I can't see his little feet. But we're going to cut armholes for his little hands. So again, just folding it down and wrapping up your Baby Yoda. Once you get it how you like it, and the feel for his little arm is probably about right there. So I'm going to take this off, and I'm going to pinch it up and down like that. I'm going to grab my scissors. I'm going to put just a little slit. And that's going to be a little armhole. And then on the other side, again, I'm going to grab where his little arm is, and I'm going to grab up and down. And again, now I have two little slits. I'm going to fold this and that. To tack this down, you're going to put your stitch underneath the little fold. So see where that little fold goes? And I'm going to come up this way. You don't have to come up this way. And knot your thread really good, or you can use 6 strands, which will make it a little thicker so that knot doesn't come through and it holds. And you're going to stuff that down there. And you're going to want to put a good 2 stitches, and it is kind of hard to see. And try not to stitch through your Baby Yoda. And honestly, if you want to come up the other way, it's a little easier to come from the top down and pull it up through his cloak and tie the knot here. Probably no one will see, so you can do it that way too. Trim your thread. And then I'm gonna tuck that down in there. All right, and there you have your little Baby Yoda keychain.